Today we're going to be talking about recruitment biases. Adopting recruitment biases is something that we all do at one time or another, and as humans it's difficult not to stereotype people in relation to these biases, but it can lead us to making the wrong hiring decision, so we need to be aware of them. Some of the recruitment biases that you may or may not be aware of is, first of all, is the halo effect. This is where you're interviewing a candidate, you are really hearing only the positive things that they say and not listening really to any negative aspects of the interview. The opposite of that is the cloven hoof effect, and this is where you're taking on board maybe a very negative comment and then letting that override any other positive comments that you have through the interview. Other than that, there's things like leniency and harshness. Leniency is where you're giving the candidate too high a score. Harshness is where you're scoring them too low. And then there's the central effect, which falls somewhere in between that. This is where you're giving them a score that's very much in the middle and extreme, and avoiding extreme sort of biases. The other type of biases you might have is the first effect, and this is the first impression you might have of a candidate, and letting that override anything that comes after that. The opposite of that is the recency effect, and that is listening to something that they said most recently and then forgetting or avoiding anything that they might have said earlier in the interview. There's also the stereotyping. This is where you make assumptions based on, and an example might be, men are stronger leaders than women. And lastly, there's projection. This is a bias where you are looking at the person in light of someone similar to yourself and therefore scoring them higher, but if they're different to yourself, you might give them a low score. These are some of the biases that you just need to be aware of when you're interviewing, and making sure that you're not making that mistake while you're interviewing the candidates. A step further that you might take is in relation to certain things you need to be aware of in terms of not asking them certain questions. Not only is it not allowed and is seen as discriminatory, but it can be illegal. Things like pregnancy in the future, age, race, marital status, sexual orientation, trade union activity, health issues, even criminal background. These are things that you aren't allowed to ask in an interview situation. So just make sure when you're interviewing candidates that you are aware of these biases, that you're not asking anything that is anti-discriminatory, and that will help you make a much better hiring decision in the future.